tastings team too, and one of them will be able to help you. Now, I have my very militant timing sheets that hopefully you all saw, with rough estimates about when we're going to be doing stuff. I'm bang on time. So without further ado, I would like to introduce both Luke and Cam from 10 Greek Street for them to tell us a little bit about each of them. So cheers, members.
Cheers. Cheers. Thanks, Anna. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Luke. This is Cam. Together we've got 10 Greek Street in Soho. We've been there since 2012, so coming up for 10 years now, 10 years next February. It's a small little informal bistro brasserie in the heart of Soho. Seasonal fresh food, menu changes constantly, everything's on a blackboard, fun, friendly, relaxed. Obviously the last 18 months or so have been slightly different for everyone, but yeah, we're just, touch wood, getting back to normal soon, hopefully. And yeah, we serve we call it Mediterranean, or some people call it modern European style menu. As I say, we focus on seasonality. We also focus on wines, really good, well-priced, fun, exciting wines, change that all the time, and other drinks and whatnot. So yeah, it's lovely to be here, and we're excited to do this with the Wine Society.
Well, it is our pleasure to have you. Thank you both so much, particularly on a Saturday night, giving up your evening. Saturday, when we are allowed to, when hospitality is open again, we are really grateful. And I know that lots of members are very grateful as well. So thank you.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
I think we're going to kick off with wine because it's 7:03 and this was a tasting that started at 7 o'clock. So for this particular pairing, we're going to definitely talk about the wine first and then a bit of food, and then we're going to have a chat about it. It feels a bit chicken and egg doing that, members. I hope some of you, hopefully all of you, have got the wines that we suggested, but if you haven't, you might have an alternative. This particular pairing, the boys sent me the box in advance. It was actually the hardest of the three to pair. The reason I say that is you read a menu and you think you know what it's going to taste like. But actually it was a really complex dish for me to pair with. In particular, the thing I found quite challenging was the sugar in the brine of the cucumber and the fennel. And I'll ask Luke and Cam to talk about that in a minute. But for me, I tried loads of dry wines and none of them worked. I tried a dry Riesling, I did, but I tried things like Grüne Veltliner that was slightly herbaceous, but still have the good acid. Tried lots of things. And actually I ended up, Gil and I had an extensive conversation, and this is an off-dry Riesling. So there's a little bit of sweetness. And for me, that's why that slight sweetness in those well, veggies, I suppose you'd call them. For me, that works. But the other really good thing about Riesling is that it has very high acidity. Naturally, the great Riesling has high acidity. So this has enough of that kind of mouth-watery sensation to be able to cut through the richness of the fish as well. So if you are tasting the two together this evening, hopefully you have it nice and chilled. You'll get a lovely perceived acidity there as well. The sugar isn't sweet sugar. It's just that lovely sort of rich, sweet finish. On the nose, for me, things like orange peel, orange blossom, lemons, yeah, that floral note, but it's still quite minerally and quite stony. And you would expect that from where this particular wine is from, and that is the Mosel in Germany. So I've talked about why the food and wine works, or why it worked for me at least. It's worth saying that food and wine matching is an art, not a science, and so it may not work for you. But I'm going to tell you more about the producer and more detail on the wine in a moment. But I think I'm going to hand over to Luke and Cam, because they're going to give an example, plate it up for us, or show us their plated version, and talk a little bit about the flavors of the dish and the inspiration. So over to you guys.
Okay. Hi guys. So what we've done tonight is not tonight, we've prepped it in advance, but it's a smoked trout rillette bound with creme fraiche. And through it, we've put loads of parsley, lemon, capers, and dill. And then we've pickled some fennel and some cucumber. Now, what we've done, cutting back to what you were talking about with the sugar in the pickles themselves. So we do a mix of sugar, water, salt, and Chardonnay vinegar. And then we put a few coriander seeds, black peppercorns, and we strain all those out. But we bring it to the boil, cool it down, and then we tip it over the vegetables once the liquid is cooled. That's just so they don't turn brown. So if you obviously pour it over when they're hot, your pickle will go a sort of browny color. But yeah, you're right. It is quite sugary, and there's a reason for that because of the capers and the dill in the rillette itself. We want to cut that, and we put a load of lemon juice in the mix as well. So we feel that that's a good sort of balance between acidity and saltiness, and the dill that has quite a punchy flavour. Should I plate it up?
Yeah, that would be lovely.
Tilt the computer so you can see. Hold on. Does that
Getting
work?
it. That's
so there's
great.
4 of us tonight. So I took it all out and just put it back in. Give it a good mix, guys, because obviously we've done this a couple of days in advance, and it should be that sort of consistency that you can just literally get a nice old wallop, bang it on there.
My plating looks nowhere near as good as that already. Mine was a splodge, but I don't know if members.
Well, we got all fancy on it, but I think we're just rustic.
I think I liked what you were saying, Cam, as well about that. There's like a bit of tension or a bit of a battle, but in a really nice way, about the sugar, the lemon, the capers. And I forgot to mention the dill, because actually the dill was another big reason I chose Riesling, because it's a great herby wine.
Thing that Luke actually said, because when I put the Riesling to my lips, I thought to myself, well, it's quite sweet. But then Luke was quick to point out that actually the dill, which can take a bit of sugar,
I think absolutely.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is it's not a wine. So this is probably, as I said, members, it was my hardest pairing. But it's also probably the most left field pairing of the evening as well. So it's nice to see that some of you are already saying super combination. And other members said that they normally would sidestep an off-dry Riesling, but this is a cracking combo. I appreciate that, Ken. It did take a bit of work. Look at that plating. That's infinitely better than mine is. But there we are. Nice to see how the pro does it.
Well,
that looks great, Cam.
Perfect. So at this point, we should probably think about getting the lamb shanks in, if you haven't already, because they'll probably
and
take.
Should have already done that on our end, Cam. But if you haven't done it on yours, then I think the chef might need to hurry up. But members, I promised I'd tell you, thank you both very much. And thanks, Cam. Luke, I'm glad you agreed that the dill could take a bit of sugar. It is
actually a nice thing, Anna, is that we didn't know what the pairings were, and when they arrived, that this is a producer that we list at the restaurant quite often as well.
Oh, great.
And we love that producer. So
fantastic. Well, this particular producer is a long-standing friend of the Wine Society. I'll tell you a bit about them now, members. I did promise that. So some of you may be very, very familiar with them already. Others perhaps less so. But the von Kesselstadt estate actually dates all the way back to the 1300s. They own, it's either 34 or 36, numbers are never my strong point, hectares in the Mosel, Saar, Ruhr areas of Germany. They only grow on their top sites, on these sites, they only grow Riesling. So they specialize in it. But that particular part of Germany really does specialize in that grape variety anyway. The site itself is called Niedermenninger, and it's not their top site. They do have others that are sort of their equivalent to the cruise, but this is one that is one that the wine society's followed for a long time. Our buyer for Germany, Marcel Alford Williams, loves this site, thinks it makes really cracking wines at an affordable price. Very, very good value site. I'll tell you a little bit about German labeling, but I don't want to go into it too much, not only because I'm going to be short on time in 3 minutes, but a little bit on the fact that it says cabinet. So some of you may know, some of you perhaps not so much, but there's different, German wine is banded by the amount of sugar that's naturally in the grape before anything happens in the winery. So not about the end levels of sugar, but before anything happens in the winery, there's an Ursula scale, which is how much the density of sugar basically in those natural grapes. Cabernet is the wines that come from the main harvest, but the name Cabernet actually comes from them being a little bit richer. And these were the wines that the winemakers would put into their cabinet to store. They were the best of the main harvest wines. There are other later wines where you leave the grapes on the vine for a long time to get even richer and more sugars. But the cabinet style has between 67 and 80 or 82 on this sugar scale naturally. And it means that you can produce dry wines from it because all of those sugars could be fermented. You'd get a wine with, say, 13% alcohol, but it would have no sugar. The nice thing about this wine is they have slowed the fermentation and then halted it. So this particular wine is a Cabernet with 10% alcohol. And that effectively means that if you imagine it like a weighing scales or a balance beam, if you ferment all of the sugar, you'll have higher alcohol and lower sugar, but they've not quite gone there yet. So there's still a little bit of sugar left over, not enough to make a properly sweet wine, but enough to, I think, have a really lovely texture in the mouth. And like I said, go with that brined, sort of sugary, but also exactly as Luke mentioned, dill, which is actually quite a sweet herb. So that's all I've got masses of time for the German wine. What I would say is on the running order, now was the time to go and start preparing the lamb. We've given you 10 minutes, and that might be too much for some of you. It might be spot on for others. Or you might just want to chat amongst your friends and family who are there at the moment. I luckily have my food ready to go, so I'll stay on camera. But if everybody could be back here for 7:25, so in 10 minutes time, that's when we'll start talking about the next pairing. However, if you do want to stick around, I'll be here. If you want to ask any questions, that's the perfect time to do it. We can do it in the break. But other than that, yeah, please be back here for 7:25. So we'll see you shortly.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I do have a few questions, Luke and Cam.
Yeah.
The one was one's a whiny question, but I've got an answer for it because I tried it, which was whether a dry citrusy Clare Valley Riesling would have worked with this dish. The answer is yes, it would. The sad answer is we didn't have enough stock of any dry Clare Valley Rieslings. But the thing I would still say is it wasn't as good as the wine with a tiny bit of sugar in, David. So unfortunately, they were delicious and they do work really well, but definitely that tiny bit of sugar brought the whole dish together. It worked more harmoniously, should we say, with the dish, just to have that tiny bit of residual. So I hope that answered your question, David. You said shame about the stock. Yes, we actually have quite low stocks of Clare Valley Rieslings at the moment. Not always, just as it stands at the moment. No doubt we'll be getting a huge batch in. We've got quite a focus on Australia coming up later in the year, David. So watch out for that. And we'll have some more in. Lovely stuff. Luke and Cam, whilst I've got you here as well, I thought it'd be nice to quiz you both a little on your backgrounds and what got you into food.
Sure.
So Luke, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I should have explained in a minute. So at the beginning, I'm sure you've ascertained by now, Cam is the chef. He's the one who deals with the food. I do the front of house and the drinks list and everything, you know, outside of the kitchens. That's how we work together. I started in restaurants after I left uni, working in a few different places in London. I then went to work for a wine importer. I'm sure, Anna, you'll know, called Liberty Wines. And I worked for them. I worked with restaurants in and around the city, East London, working with Liberty Wines and supplying wines to restaurants. One of the restaurants that I supplied was called the Wapping Project, which was in Wapping, amazing restaurant, and the head chef was Cam. And my goal had always been, after I'd left uni and decided to go into restaurants, was to try and set up a restaurant eventually. And I realized that I needed a chef partner, and Cam and I met, and we, you know, hit it off, really got on, had the same views and ideas and about things, and it kind of developed from there. And we ended up, you know, scraping together a little bit of money and finding the place in 10 Greek Street and going from there really, and setting up, as I say, in 2012.
Wonderful. And Cam, you were Leon, and I apologize, Menezes or Menzies could be, says, I remember the Wapping Project, a great space.
Yeah, it was. It's amazing, actually.
It was an old, what was it?
It was an old hydraulic power station, which through small pipes, it pumped water into the West End and lowered and raised the curtains in theatres, a couple of theatres, and lifts in hotels.
Oh, extraordinary.
So that was my first head chef job. So I'm from New Zealand, came over 18 years ago and worked around London for a bit, and then finally got my first head chef job. And I was there for, I think, 6.5 years. And the last sort of couple of years of that, I met Luke. And yeah, I started doing some dinners around town and different locations. Luke would come and talk about the wine, and all the regulars that used to come to my dinners really loved him. And we were like, all right, what should we do? Let's do this. So we set up 10 Greek Street, and yeah, we've been going for 10 years nearly. So, and we haven't punched each other out yet.
We tried.
Yeah, we tried.
Yeah.
It looks like you have.
Yeah. Wow, he was getting cheeky, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, I think we'll. I want to save sort of the ethos question and your seasonality for the next round.
Sure.
Because I think we'll talk a bit more about that then. But if we've got any other member questions, do feel free to fire them through. Lovely if we do. But of course, if you're busy preparing your lamb, then we totally understand. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on the first pairing, guys. Whether you've already mentioned you were a little surprised at the sweetness, or at least Cam was. What would you have normally paired with this dish, Luke, if you were serving it in the restaurant?
I think that, to be honest, I like the fact that there's a little bit of residual sugar, as you said, that stands up to the sweetness of the dish. I think that it's quite hard to sometimes match a dish like this because of that sweetness, because of the herb, the dill going through it. Riesling works really well. I don't know. I'm trying to think. As you said, a Gruner, a kind of maybe a medium-bodied Chardonnay, not with loads of oak, but like a medium-bodied Chardonnay, I think would have worked quite well. You need something, I think, with a bit of weight to it, but you don't want it to be overpowering. That's why I can see why you say it's probably the hardest of the dishes to match. It's a tough one, but I think this works really well. I think it's
also, you remember, it's bound with creme fraiche, and it is an oily fish trout, so it's kind of I completely see where you're going as well with the sweetness of the pickles and yeah, I think, and dill's dill's a difficult one to match as well, I think.
It really is. Yeah, it can really make or break a wine pairing, dill.
Yeah. And I think also, sometimes your inclination with dishes is to do the opposite of the dish, to cut through. So your first inclination might be to do something really dry, really crisp, really acidic, because you're trying to cut through the creme fraiche, you're trying to cut through but actually you're then in danger, as you say, with the dill of clashing slightly. So this one I think works because it marries a bit as opposed to cutting through.
And I do think there is probably a dry wine out there that I just didn't try on my sort of frantic. I think I ended up opening 8 or 9 bottles, and that's after I'd sort of made a short list. And I'm sure there is a dry wine out there that would have been just as good a pairing. It's not a one size fits all job, but it's certainly. I had a couple of off dry wines, and they were the ones that stood out to me. And like you say, I sort of ended up trying to replicate the dish in a way in the glass. Which is certainly one technique. But yes, we've also got Karen has kindly sent us a photo. So just before, I think we've got 2 minutes left. Karen's kindly sent us in a picture of her setup. So we'll just show everyone.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Look at that, great stuff.
The name Carol, is it?
Karen Woods.
Would you like a job?
Yeah.
There we go, Karen. You can get yourself a job, and some brilliant glassware. You're quite right. Really good stuff there.
Yeah, I love that glassware. That's great.
Yeah, fun. I'm glad Karen's poured the Rioja as well. That was something. Pardon me. That was something I recommended. It's a wine that needs a bit of love and attention. So I'm going to go grab my lamb, but as soon as I get back, I might remind members that pour the Rioja if they haven't already. And likewise, if you two haven't, now is a good time to get that Rioja poured. I will be back in 30 seconds. I've got a very Blue Peter style. Here's one I prepared earlier for this dish. So I've prepared it and had it keeping relatively warm, but it's luckily, like I said, I did manage to get a chance to try this box once before already when I was coming up with the pairings. So I have tasted it in its true glory. Lovely stuff. So we're nearly ready. Back again. It's funny not being able to see people because I don't know whether people are back, but I hope they're starting to get settled. I can see Karen's definitely at her screen, so that's good. Well done, Karen. And well, as it is 7:25, I will kick off, and then hopefully any I was going to say stragglers. that's a horrible thing to say, but any latecomers will catch up. Fingers crossed. So we are now talking about the lamb dish and talking specifically about 2 wines, although it's also worth me saying I did a bit of an experimentation to get to these 2 wines. So yes, I will briefly talk about both of the wines. If you haven't poured the Rioja yet, members, I really strongly encourage you to pour it now. It does need a little time to open up in the glass. The Zephyr Pinot will show beautifully immediately. I'll explain a bit about why that is in a moment. But yes, definitely, if you haven't opened the exhibition Rioja Alta as being beautifully demonstrated by Luke, please do get that in the glass now. And then by the time you get to it, it will have had a bit of breathing time. It's one of those wines that you'll have a glass now and it will taste a little different to the glass you have at the end of the bottle. So right, without further ado, I will talk about these 2 wines. I mentioned I've got sort of notebook of if you've seen any of these events we've done with any food before, Catherine and I are fastidious on our food and wine matching notes. And I tried how many wines with this? 7 wines with this, so not quite as many with this dish. I was a bit more confident, I will be honest. we were desperate to have a rosé because, I mean, the weather is actually nice. I'm quite surprised, but we were desperate to have a rosé with this because I really did want to show that a rosé would work. Not all rosés, but particularly the wines from somewhere like Tavel, which is the only rosé only appellation in France, down in the southern Rhone. And it was really good. It worked particularly with the olives and the almonds and those very, very Mediterranean flavors. But the rosés just weren't enough. And we'll talk about the jus shortly, but it didn't feel right to not have a red wine with this dish with such a rich jus. So I did go for two very, very different styles. Depending on what your weather's like, members, I wonder whether it might have some sort of impression on which your preferred is. But I would say the Pinot, so the Zephyr Marlborough Pinot, which you may have chilled. Obviously, don't worry if you haven't, but I did chill mine beforehand. The Zephyr Pinot is probably more suitable for summer. And if you're eating this outside, chances are you might lean towards that, just in the very nature of the wine. We're all simple creatures at heart, and I think I'm persuaded by weather as much as anything. But you might find that that's your preferred. And then the alternative is the Rioja Alta, which is much richer, much more of an autumnal wine in my sort of strange seasonal brain, but I think is an amazing combination. So, Cam, how would you like to play this? Because how's your lamb looking? Shall I talk the Pinot first, then you could do a lamb plate up example, and then the Rioja? Would that work?
Good. Yep, sounds really good.
Great. So for me, and members, please definitely dig into the Pinot, dig into the lamb if it's ready. I have got the lamb, but I'll wait until they're plating up for me to start stuffing myself. But the Pinot here, hopefully lovely bright light colour that you would expect from Pinot Noir. There's an amazing cherry smell for me on the nose of this. A touch of spice, some sort of like baking spice type things, which you can get from these styles of Pinot. Things like currants, cedar wood. So this has been oaked. This was oaked for 2 years. I'll double check my notes on that, but I think 2 years. Over winter, sorry, the next wine's 2 years. So this was oaked over the winter time, so it saw a few months in oak, and they weren't particularly new barrels, but they were French, so they've imparted a little bit of flavour but not too much, and they give that cedar flavour, which is very different to the flavours of oak we'll get in the next wine. For me, those sorts of spices and a slightly herby nose is great with lamb. And Pinot generally is quite good with lamb, right from lamb chops through to a shank. And one of the main reasons for me is that herbal nose. But the other thing is that lamb is quite a fatty meat. And Pinot Noir is one of the highest acidity, or has one of the highest acidities of any of the red grapes. So when you take a little sip, hopefully you'll find it's a very refreshing wine. And therefore, for me, was really good with the sort of fattiness of the meats. A little bit about the producer of this wine, and I think we've got even a photo of the exact vineyard that it's from, which we can pop up. But we had Ben Glover, who makes this wine. Here it is. Right. This is the north of Marlborough. Sorry, this is Marlborough. We'll go back. There we go. So this particular part in Marlborough is called Dillon Point. And Dillon Point's right on the north. The reason the wine is called Zephyr is because of the gentle breeze that's coming over the sea there. He specializes in single vineyard wines, although this is actually a blend of 2 vineyards, but that was how he sort of started Zephyr wines. Their family had actually been growing the grapes here in this region in Dillon Point since 1988. And they were one of the first people to grow vines here in this particular subzone. They specialize in aromatic varieties, so even things like Gewürztraminer, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, obviously, but they really specialize in beautiful, incredible sort of masses of land reaching out to the sea. I think you can see the sea in the back of that picture. But they specialize in these aromatic grape varieties. You get the cooling breeze coming off the sea, And that really, really is a good environment for this type of grape. When I say aromatic, I mean grapes you can smell. It's as simple as that, really. The next wine is interestingly not an aromatic variety, and we can talk a bit about that in a moment. But often there are lovers of Pinot because of the smell, and there are people who are a bit underwhelmed with Pinot because the smell is usually much greater than the body. This is a light-bodied wine. Don't expect it to be big and punchy. This is a great, as I mentioned, summery pairing with a lamb dish, or a spring-summer pairing for me, because it isn't heavy. It's lovely, it's light, it's refreshing, but flavor-wise and aroma-wise, it's still very rich and a special grape variety. And for this price, you wouldn't get a wine of this quality for this price in Burgundy or in France, in its homeland. So we're fortunate that places like Marlborough can grow it and can produce it more cheaply. And yes, I hope members like it. What do you think, Luke and Cam?
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, it's got all that complexity. You talked about the currants and the cedar wood, and I think it will work really well with the fattiness of the lamb. Again, it's maybe, we're talking about marrying or cutting through. This is maybe more of a cut through style, and then the Rioja might be, more of a marrying. I'm not sure, we'll see it when we taste it, but it's got lovely freshness to it, doesn't it? It's just really bright, and that lovely New Zealand Pinot Marlborough style that you're looking for, really.
And Cam, your thoughts?
My thoughts, well, I am a Kiwi, so I do love my Pinots.
Too biased, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the brief was to do the dishes, and then there was kind of like, well, it's got to go in the oven. So we lend ourselves to using a shank because it would be easier for the tasting. I probably wouldn't, even though spring lamb's around, I probably normally wouldn't, in these months, would be doing a braised lamb shank. But actually, I think that combos, and with the weather the way it is today, I think it's going to go perfectly. I think that combination with the almonds and the beans and the sherry vinegar, the
sweetness,
olives and the beans, I think it's going to work really well.
And the temperature of the Pinot, being that slightly cooler, I really love that.
Yeah, it just brings out that lovely freshness, doesn't it? And what New Zealand Pinot is all about, vibrant, fresh.
Yeah, but it's got enough acidity and crunch to it. Sometimes, another New Zealand Pinot can maybe get a bit soapy, like doesn't have enough acidity and crunch to hold itself, but this does. I think it works.
And interestingly, I tried a US Pinot. I wanted to try a few New World Pinots, amongst other things with this, but I did try a Pinot from the US, and I'm just looking now, and there was a bit. The fruit was a little bit too hot and warm, and it was not jammy at all by any stretch, but it was definitely ripe fruit. And it didn't work quite as well. You almost want that tartness, particularly like you say with the sherry vinegar. And then it also had a lot more new oak influence, and that kind of chocolatey thing didn't work either. It really, for me, the fact that this is fresh, and exactly like you say, Luke, it cuts through the lamb. That for me is why it was a good bet.
Yeah.
David Buchanan has asked, many New World Pinots often don't have that classic barnyard nose. Why is that? Or has my sense of smell just gone? Hopefully not the latter part, David. But no, many New World Pinots don't. It's a whole host of things. One, or it can be an age thing. So often Burgundian Pinots go farmy when they are sort of 10, 15 years. But it can also be how they're produced. And sometimes they are aged for much longer in oak that doesn't impart flavor. So old oak barrels, large old oak. But although it doesn't impart flavor, it makes the texture and the structure beautiful. But then it also kind of doesn't speed up the aging, but it certainly speeds up certain elements of aroma aging. So instead of getting this bright, fresh, crunchy fruit, you would then move towards the more animal flavors. So there are new world producers who are making very much a Burgundian style of Pinot Noir. They exist, but you're quite right. Most people, and particularly people from making this beautiful style from Marlborough, are trying to make it in a very, very different way. So often slightly more reductive winemaking, so less oak influence, certainly less oak fermentation and aging, and releasing them younger as well, quite frankly. So all of that sort of thing will add up. Okie dokes. So I think, I don't know where you're at, Cam, with your lamb.
Yeah, we're ready.
Are you ready to rock?
Yeah. What I'll do is we'll just plate one. We're a table of 4, but I think we'll plate one.
Lovely.
Cameraman roll up again. Hold on.
Yeah.
Members, earlier when we were getting ready, we had Cam, it's your little boy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cam's little boy was here as the apprentice earlier, just overseeing all of the preparations.
Yeah,
so
we moved him on. He was a little bit slow for us.
Yeah.
Oh.
So when doing this, when coming up with this, I was quite cautious of the brief, and I think I normally would have liked to done something like pan-seared or something that was pink, but I thought to myself, well, it's going to be better for the tasting if we braise something and it's easier for you to work with. So in doing the accompaniment with it, I was like, well, let's make it light. So beans, almonds, dressed with sherry vinaigrette and some olives, and then making sure that we made things fresh with the mint. So just over the top, I'm just going to scatter some mint. Through the sauce, we're going to flick the peas and just keep it really simple. So here we go. You may have put your potatoes in with your lamb, which I instructed, but I didn't do that. I didn't do that because there's 4 of us and we didn't have a big enough pan. So I've literally just thrown them in the oven with a little bit of garlic and rosemary from Luke's garden. So I've cheated, sorry. And then just with your peas, I'll flick them through the sauce. Grab you one of your lovely lamb shanks there. There should be some lovely carrots and stuff like that in there as well in your braising liquor. Just give that a nice little round there like that. And then just run your knife just quickly through the mint. It will just give off a bit more of an aroma, and then that will freshen the dish up, I think.
Yeah, the mint's lovely. It's again,
Yeah,
it throws a left field on the pairing front.
Absolutely, and I think, and more importantly, it's going to freshen the whole thing up, and it will be summery then.
Looks brilliant, thank you.
And if you've got it, a little drizzle of olive oil, bosh.
Thank you so much, Cam. Appreciate it.
I've just put the beans on the side there. So all of those that were, I just mixed them all together with a little bit of salt and pepper, and the dressing was there, and you just bind them together. There you go.
Lovely. Thank you. Amazing.
Okay.
So yeah, mine didn't look as professional as that, and it took me much longer. But I did manage to put it in a bowl, as was that bowl as was advised. And actually, I only did that this time. I didn't have that on my first instructions, and it's made a massive difference because it means it's so easy to mop up those sauces. And I've really enjoyed. I never put peas in a sauce, and I think actually it's really lovely to have the sauce running through the peas. Leon has said that the green beans are delicious. I agree, Leon. I could have had a whole bowl of those myself on a sort of summer platter. Just those. I would have been a happy girl. So I think it's time to talk about the second wine with this pairing. Hopefully, members, you're still enjoying them. Karen looks like she's tried both of them, which is great. We like that. I want to do a battle. We'll see which one the favourite is. But the second wine to pair here is probably a slightly more classic pairing, or it's certainly more classic with this type of dish, as in a richer dish. I think most people, when you're talking lamb, tend tend to edge towards a more traditional, whether it's a Bordeaux or a Rioja. For me, Bordeaux and lamb is delicious, and I prefer red Bordeaux with lamb to with beef. I think it's a bit more interesting. But I do think that for this particular dish, because it's so Mediterranean, you had to have something that not only went with the lamb, but it also went with the beans and the almonds and the olives. And there's something about this aged Rioja has this lovely sort of, not tapenade, but moving into that kind of, a tapenade olivey smell to it, which is fantastic.
Very savoury.
Yeah, very savoury. And Tempranillo, so this Rioja in particular is 100% Tempranillo. And a lot of people say there is very little fruit in Tempranillo. It's actually a savoury grape variety. So often in Rioja, they blend Tempranillo with Grenache or Garnacha, and that brings a lot of the fruit. So the more fruity styles of Rioja you will have had, chances are they are more Grenache based. Whereas this is Tempranillo. And so it is quite savoury. It's quite leathery, quite earthy. There is still a little bit of sort of sweetness, which I think goes really well with the jus. But that sweetness is actually coming from the oak. So I mentioned earlier about the Pinot Noir having had a smaller amount of time on oak and the oak being older. This has actually been aged for 2 years, and the first year is in brand new American oak barrels. And what that does is that will add that kind of that lifted aromatic. So it's again a little bit spicy, and it's got almost a ever so slightly vanilla-esque smell to it. The nice thing is that that's quite classic of old Rioja. And La Rioja Alta, who produced this for us for our exhibition range, they hero and are very good at a traditional style of Rioja, and this is it. This is about as traditional as it gets. The vineyards are higher up, so they have quite a decent amount of acidity. Gorgeous vineyard shot there. Maybe in our Psyche Gill, when we were putting the pictures together, I thought, yes, it is an autumn wine, but it feels autumnal. There's an autumnal picture of the vineyards. But they are high up, so they're about 600 meters above sea level. So that means that they don't get too hot and jammy. This was a particularly warm year, actually, 2015. However, there is still great acidity. And what can happen in Rioja when you're not on such good sites is that the grapes really ripen. They get very, very hot. And unfortunately, the warmer the grapes and the longer they get in the sunshine, that acidity just naturally drops. But the altitude here sort of stops that happening. They've got much cooler evenings. This Tempranillo was also grown on chalky soil, and that's the best friend of Tempranillo. There is no soil better to grow quality Tempranillo. And the vines are about 40 years old. And the older the vine tends to produce a more concentrated juice. So, I mean, it's a powerful wine. There's no two ways about it. It's definitely, for me, the sort of richer, opulent, indulgent version or indulgent option of the two. We've obviously already had Karen's vote, which was for the Pinot. Jury's still a bit out for me. I'm not sure. I think this has enough complexity to go with both. If anything, I'd probably argue it's got a little bit more complexity. I think maybe the slightly lower acid means that cutting through the lamb, it doesn't. Luke, you phrased it perfectly earlier. The Pinot perhaps is more of like a cut through and a not that they're at odds, but that it sort of slices through the lamb. It's lighter. It's a bit of a contrast to the dish. Whereas here, the Rioja is maybe just adding elements on top of the dish. It kind of makes everything even bigger and everything bolder. Certainly, I feel like that with the jus. So I'm keen to hear members' thoughts. But Luke and Cam, I'm keen to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, it's a lovely wine. It's, as you say, changed in the glass already from when we poured it in, and it's got a nice balance of it is definitely a richer wine, but it's still got that good acidity and the oak comes through, but it's definitely got that classic Rioja new oak style, but it's not overpowering, too sickly. It's still got enough of the rest of the wine to hold it up, and it's probably a little bit more autumnal as a match to the Pinot, maybe for the colder months. But it's nice having the two. I think it just depends what mood you're in, doesn't it? I mean, if you're looking for a rich, warming, comforting match, then that's probably the Rioja. And if you're looking to keep the freshness to the dish, then maybe that's the Pinot. But it's also added with the to add difficulty to it is the beans. Having the beans with the vinaigrette at a room temperature as well, that adds another level. So maybe the Pinot works with those being that room temp, the temperature and the acidity, etc. But they both work well. It's a lovely wine, the Rioja.
And quite interesting to have them side by side, I think. That's quite a nice way, because they're totally different wines, aren't they?
Yeah.
And work perfectly with both. So good. You nailed it.
Thanks. Well, I'll just tell members a tiny bit about Rioja Alta if they don't know, but a really tiny bit. It's a winery we've worked with for a long time. They produce, like I mentioned, particularly traditional styles of Rioja. They have a few different sub-brands. Ken has commented saying love their 904. They do, in fact, we sell their 904. They produce exclusive wines for us at the Wine Society. So not only this, but they do annual bottling and exclusive annual bottling for us. But they have been, I think they've been our Rioja Reserva own label for a long time now. So Pierre will have to give me the exact dates, but we've been working with them for eons. And yes, like I said, a very old traditional company founded in the 1890s, sort of have grown naturally into quite a large company that like I mentioned, look after a lot of brands. But yes, a real firm favorite for me. There are incredible Rioja producers out there doing more sort of experimental things and trying new blends and all that sort of jazz. But working with Tempranillo, which is such a traditional grape of the region, it has historically been quite hard work. A lot of producers, you could only taste the oak. Luke mentioned that it's oaked without being over oaked, and that was a major issue in Rioja for a long time. That the really traditional styles used to smell like Bounty bars. They were kind of coconut and chocolate and vanilla and not much wine. And partly that's Tempranillo wasn't grown very well. People didn't know how to grow good quality Tempranillo that had flavor. So they had a neutral grape in Tempranillo and they chucked a load of American oak at it. And that's just not the case now. And so interestingly, La Rioja Alta are very modern in their techniques about the grape growing and all those sorts of things, but they are keeping a traditional foundation to the wine. So American oak, longer aging and all those sorts of things. And it's worth mentioning as well, it's a 2015 vintage. So it had the 2 years in oak. And then since then it has intentionally been aged in bottle, as is the legal requirement, but we then have actually kept hold of it as well in our cellars. So we believe it's drinking now. But actually you could keep hold of this wine as well. This wine would age really nicely. 2015, like I said, being a slightly hotter year, might not age as long as some of the cooler years, but you could still easily keep hold of this for 5 to 10 years and get more and more out of it at every opening. If you bought a case and opened one a year, you'd have a lovely time for 12 years. Right, now I mentioned earlier, members, please do comment, let us know what you're thinking of the wines. We'd love to have a vote. We are going to do a poll at the end so that you can vote on your absolute favorite, but if you have a favorite between those two wines, it might be that you preferred one wine but you liked the pairing of another, who knows, but do let us know. The other thing that we were going to talk about in this segment, Luke and Cam, though, was we were going to talk about your provenance and your sourcing and your commitment, should I say, to top quality ingredients. Yep. So would you mind giving members a little insight on that?
Okay, so that's me, really. So we work with a load of small farms. So we might use whole pigs, half a cow at times. This week we've got 3 whole lambs in, and small individual farms. We're very careful about sustainability and fish as well. got a few different. I mean, we probably use about 6 different fish suppliers, and lots of them are day boat guys as well. And then also we still have the big sort of generic ones as well that do the everyday stuff, because you can't get the day boat every single day of the week. So you still have to use the big boys, but we try to use small little independent guys, and that stems right through our business, with wines as well. We try and even into our spirits we try and use London gin, and we try our best. Yeah, I think that's what we do.
No, that's absolutely spot on. I think that was one of the things. So Gil from the tastings team kindly set this up and started the conversations, and that's certainly something that really attracted us to 10 Greek Street. You share a similar ethos, supporting smaller producers. We might also support big producers, but they have to be aligned with the Wine Society values, and we're very keen to do that. So yeah, it was a lovely partnership, a match made in heaven when Gil suggested it. So we're thrilled.
I think it's also important, sorry to interrupt, but it's talking about the smaller producers and everything is also talking about the seasonality of Cam's cooking and our menu is that, this is very seasonal: peas, mint, spring, summer. That's what we do. We don't serve asparagus in December. Everything's seasonal, everything's fresh. Everything's as local as it can be. We're always searching for the best example of whatever it is, whether it's a charcuterie or it's a vegetable or it's a fish or it's a wine. We're looking for the best example, but we're also looking for it to be seasonal and it to be small farmer if possible, or as you say, a company that if it's bigger, it's aligned with what we're trying to do and create the best possible produce.
Yeah, like we have to use the big fish suppliers, like I said before, but we also make sure that they take all the steps along the way to make sure that they're as sustainable as possible. And, that's, the ethos of our business.
Fantastic. Thank you both very much. Before we sign off now, I've got my running order to hand, but I believe we're signing off in 1 minute for our next break, which is great because I apologize if you can hear my little whippet. She's crying to go to the loo herself. But I've got one quick question before we sign off for 10 from David Buchanan, who has said, we have friends who will use different shaped glasses for these 2 wines. Is that something you would advise? Now, from my point of view, David, yes and no. Different wines certainly suit different styles of glasses. There's no real dispute on that. But the reality is most of us don't have different shaped glasses for several wines. And if you can buy a wine glass that's jack of all trades, master of none, that for me is a better solution personally. So my glasses, these are from Vivo. The reason I like these is they have a nice wide base, and I fill the wine generally not a base, a bowl. I tend to fill the wine to where the bowl starts to taper in. And then they have a smaller top, which basically just means that all of the aromas are going up to my nose more easily. You can buy, Pinot tends to love a really big bowl. Now, again, the reason is we've just talked about it. It's very aromatic. So that really big bowl and the more extreme curvature is great for Pinot because the air gets into the Pinot, but the tapering is still right up to the nose. So yes, it does help. Is it something I would advise? Probably not, actually. I'd buy something durable, sensible, and I think as long as you have a taper in, then I think you're doing a good job. How about you guys, Luke and Cam? What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
I know Luke's going to agree with you. When we were setting up, we had a massive, not an argument, I wouldn't say, but I was like, let's just have a simple glass. But Luke was like,
you wanted a tumbler.
Yeah. Anyway, he got his way, so let's just move on.
Fair enough.
I personally agree with you, and I think to try and stick too closely to this needs to be in this or etc. It's difficult, isn't it, in situations? But I think also you want a glass that you enjoy drinking out of. It's quite important. You know, I really like thin glass. I like a certain shape. And when you've got a glass that you like and it works in your hand and weight, and everyone's different, I think that's really nice. And as you say, obviously the logistics of a tapered glass and etc. We had we were working with a company at the restaurant, and they had a deal with Zalto glasses. So we managed to get hold of a few of them, and I managed to get some home. So I got some of those, which I love. But that's just a personal. There's loads of great glasses.
But it is amazing how, actually, if you have a really nice glass, how you get used to it and you really love it, don't you? And then you.
Yeah, glass snobbery's a thing.
Not tumblers, but you know.
Yeah.
Need must. Yeah.
I feel like David might have hit on a sore spot there. Alrighty, well, we've run a tiny bit over, but hopefully, because the next course is just prepping some cold things, then it won't be too much of a hurry, members, to get you back here by 8:05. And we are going to be discussing the final pair. I need to go and get the Muscat de Bombe de Venise out of my fridge, and I also need to go and get my pudding out my fridge as well. But I'll be back on at 8, and I'll be around to answer any questions if you have them then, members. So I'll see anyone at 8, but hopefully everyone at 8:05.
Cool. See you soon.
Hello again, everyone. I'm very conscious now that we're going to be competing with football. So hopefully you might have the football on in the background. That would be rather lovely. And otherwise, I'm here to answer any questions and really excited about the final pair. But if anyone has any questions, we've also, I think, got another great photograph to show. Catherine, I don't know whether you're there too. Lovely, great plating, Andrea. Getting a nod of approval from Luke. Oh, lovely. And from Derek, wonderful, Derek.
Nice.
Nice. And decanted the Rioja by the looks of things, which is very, very wise. Well done, Derek. Good stuff. Oh, Cam, you missed. I was wondering if we could go back and have a look at the plating from Andrea, because I think Cam might be slightly impressed.
We've got another chef on our hands.
Someone else after your job.
Oh,
Ooh.
good.
Very nice. Lovely. Linda says, not sure how people are managing to comment and cook, eat, taste. Further Rioja with the lamb, but the weather is a bit meh. Yeah, I think the weather might be might definitely be a deciding factor in this.
Yeah.
Pat, we both like the Rioja with the lamb, although normally we are big fans of Pinot from New Zealand. Great stuff. And Jackie and Colin Scott have said glasses, yes, tapered, thin, and dishwasher proof. How could I forget dishwasher proof?
Yeah.
You'd never have to wash glasses by hand.
Yeah, we had a big problem when we opened the restaurant and we were trying to use bigger glasses with our glass washer. They're just smashing all the time. We were just burning through them. So durable was a good thing as well.
Absolutely. Durable and stable, not to be underestimated.
Big time.
Lovely stuff. Right. I'm just going to let the dog back in. We've got no other questions from members just yet, but I'll be back in one moment. And we'll be ready to kick off with the final course, which I've plated up terribly. So I'm hoping that Cam's going to show us how to do it better. I'll be right back. Lovely stuff. We're all appreciating, Luke and Cam, how you're having a nice family meal there as well. I hope members are doing the same.
Yeah.
I know that we had a few people ordering multiple boxes, which was nice. But I should say that these events are, well, we have to thank 10 Greek Street for letting us do individual portions for people like myself. It's been really helpful, but I would also say that what's great about these events is many of you may know or don't know, but the Wine Society do host these wine dinners everywhere, like I said. But we've seen a whole new raft of members this evening that have never attended a wine dinner before. So it's great, you know, whether it's one member earlier said they were joining in from Scotland. So, you know, might not have been able to travel down to Soho to try the food. So for me, these sorts of events will definitely find a place in the calendar. It's great to be able to bring good people together, good food, and yeah, have lots of fun with it. And it means I get to eat delicious restaurant food and talk to members, which is actually a lovely way to spend a Saturday. So we are at 5 minutes past 8. Hopefully everybody's come back by now, fingers crossed. Yeah, looks like we've got a few people saying they're back, so that's great. Right, so I am going to give it a go talking about why I picked this wine. Then if it's all right, I'll hand back over to you, Cam, and then I'll talk about how the wine is made, which sounds a little bit chicken and egg or back to front, but there's good reason for it. There's method to my madness. So in your final glass, hopefully fresh out the fridge, and it really should be fresh out the fridge, is a Muscat de Bon de Venise made by Domaine de Bernardin, and it's the 2019 vintage, so their most recent vintage. Again, this pudding ended up being more challenging to pair than I thought it would be. Not actually because, not so much because of the flavors, but a lot to do with the consistency. So there's a big creamy component, naturally, this sort of lactose. So you want something high in acid, the wines, but also the fruit is quite acidic. But the fresh fruit's acidic. There's a sweetness in the sort of sauce, or if we can call it that. And then also you do want to match the sort of toasty notes that go with the crumble element. So a lot going on. So I thought, right, and this is before I'd chosen the first wine, I thought I'll try a Riesling, very, very sweet Riesling. And it had all of the acid to cut through the creaminess, but it didn't stand up to the fruit. So I thought, okay, fine. Tried a Sauterne and tried a Monbazillac. And again, they were good on the acid side, but they didn't have enough kind of redness or richness to match red fruits. So I went really rogue at one point and tried a chilled tawny port. But the acidity in the port for me didn't quite work with the creamy base to the well, you'll tell us what it's made from in a minute, but the vanillas and all of that kind of consistency as well of the rich lactosey flavors. So disaster. And I thought, what is going to work? And actually, it's so stupid. They say you sort of get blinded by what's right in front of you. My parents live 15 minutes from Baume de Venise, and it's a wine that I drink regularly. And, you know, whether it's when I'm down there or just generally would choose. And this particular producer is an exceptional producer who is a real fan. I'm a real fan of, massive favorite at the Wine Society. And suddenly I thought, why on earth why did I not go there? I'm going to go into the detail about how it's made, but I should just say that this is a kind of a very complex pudding wine, but that actually you wouldn't call it a pudding wine in Baume de Venise necessarily. You'd call it an aperitif wine. You'd probably have it with a pate, which might be why it wasn't in my head that this would possibly work. But actually, I do think that this style of wine goes really well with creme patisserie desserts. So, you know, your tart apricot or apple tarts as well. And actually that creme patisserie is not a million miles off this pudding, because you do have that creamy filling section, a little bit of vanilla, you've got the toasty, nutty element, which be it pastry or crumble, and then fruit on top. So that's why I landed on this particular wine. After quite literally traveling the globe, and I traveled the globe and then ended up right on my front doorstep. so I did feel a bit of a fool, but I'm going to tell you properly about the region, the producer, how it's made, etc. in a moment. But I think first I'll hand over to Cam to show you how to do it rather than what I've done, which is how not to do it, unfortunately. I don't know whether other members felt that this was a more challenging one to plate up, but I think it's probably because I haven't got the steadiest of hands. So
as long as it tastes good, that's the important thing.
And that it does.
Okay, hold on. Let me get the old
Cameraman's getting involved.
Cameraman, here we go.
So Dishbatch have kindly put it in the cheesecake element into this bag, which is a bit funny, but anyway, what we're going to do is cut the tip off and then a heavy sort of push down and bring it up. And then I think what we'll do is we'll just spoon the sort of compote around. So in the bag is, we've made like a classic sort of cheesecake mix, which is cream cheese, mascarpone. I put a touch of yogurt and creme fraiche in there, vanilla, lemon zest, and a little bit of lemon juice. And then, so the idea of this is, because we prep it in advance for this company called Dishbatch, who package it for us, I'm always a bit hesitant to do a classic cheesecake where you would do a base of sort of biscuit base, because I think that it's not going to be crunchy by the time you get it after a couple of days of travel. So this is kind of, I hate to use the word, but it's kind of deconstructed. So anyway, nip the end off, like I'm going to do here. Sort of take it probably half an inch in with a sharp knife, and then put it firmly down, and then just sort of bring it up but quite, give it a bit of force.
Already looks a lot better than mine.
This one, the compote, just put that around. So the compote has got blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, creme de mûre in it. And this crumb is made up of flour, brown sugar, so dark brown sugar, flour, dark brown sugar, oats, a touch of ginger in there, and we've made this classic sort of shortbread, it's called a Breton biscuit, and we've just mixed it all up. So it's quite buttery. I think it works really well with this. And then guys, just go over the top, and it should kind of look like that. Hey guys, yeah. This is my cello.
This is our new chef.
This
yeah.
is it. This is
Hello.
You saying hi? Hi.
Oh, I wish I had better assistants.
Yeah.
Pouring my wines.
Anyway. Yeah.
Oh, it looks great. It looks really fantastic. Thank you, Cam.
Pleasure.
And I'm interested to hear you say that there was some ginger in there. I couldn't put my finger on whether it was ginger or honeycomb, but I knew there was something in there that had that kind of waxy.
Just a touch of ginger powder we put through the crumble mix.
Yeah, it's really lovely.
Lift.
I have to say, and I'm not normally a particularly desserty person, strange sentence, but this I thought was absolutely beautiful. Just a lovely combination of flavors. Whilst my presentation wasn't great, it was actually worse today than it was when I did it the first time.
The bag was the best idea, to be honest. It would have been better with a big scoop, but anyway.
We live and learn. But as I said, I'm surprised that it took me so long to think of a wine, and I think maybe I don't know, I'll come to it more quickly in the future. I have seen a member say that they think that this is their favourite pairing. Yes, Derek said best pairing of the evening, lovely wine. So I'll tell you a little bit about how it's made, because this is a particularly interesting version of a Baume de Venise. So you may have spotted the colour, which I have to say is just the most gorgeous thing ever. Yeah, really beautiful. Not all Baume de Venise are this colour. Well, I should say Baume de Venise itself is a region, and they make red wine and this vin doux naturel. So they make sweet wine, but it has to be called Muscat de Baume de Venise. And then if you see normal Baume de Venise without the Muscat part, that is their red wine. But they do have appellation, legal rights for both names. But the sweet wine came first. That's what they're famous for. You'll see on that note is actually one of the most interesting parts of the production of this wine, because most Muscat de Baume de Venise is made with a grape called Muscat à Petit Grain Blanc, which is the white version. But here they actually add around 25% of the black version, Noir, so Muscat à Petit Grain Noir. And that's what gives it this gorgeous colour. It's also, I think, partly why I was so keen to use this particular producer, because it does add that complexity, and it adds a kind of, for me, a more orange blossom. Again, it's a bit similar to the first one, but there's certainly, I think there is a bit of ginger in there, or something slightly like that, which is why I got so excited when you said ginger. But it's definitely more complex than sometimes the Muscat de Baume de Venise can just be a little bit peachy and not much else, whereas I think this has a lot more going for it. So one of the reasons is the black and white variants of the grape variety. Another reason is that they harvest it late by hand, so they only pick the best berries, but they actually harvest it much later than legally need to. So the legal requirement for Muscat de Baume de Venise is 110 grams per litre of sugar. This, the company-wide policy, or the producer policy, I should say, is at least 250 grams per litre. So over double the legal requirements. And so really this just makes an unctuous, a bit more like a late harvest style of wine than just a vin doux naturel. And what they do when they're producing this wine is they already have this incredibly sweet must or grape juice. And then what they do is they start fermenting it. So they start converting those sugars into alcohol, and then they whack a great whole bomb of alcohol grape spirit in there. And it's a 95% ABV spirit that they put in, and that stops the yeast fermenting. So essentially that's what fortification is. But what it does is it preserves the natural sweetness of the grape. So they don't have to add any sugar. They literally just, it's almost like we're drinking nectar grape juice in a way, which I love. It really is a grapey wine, and you're allowed to say that. It tastes of grapes. And again, I think with a fruity pudding, that can be a real positive because you're really just adding to that grapiness. The reason I said please keep this in the fridge till the end, though, is it's not traditionally the most highly acidic wine. And so I thought initially it might have some issues cutting through the creaminess of the body of the cheesecake, as it were. But serving it chilled, I don't think that's a problem at all. I think if you have it cold enough out the fridge, it's still really refreshing, really vibrant. And if you were drinking it in France, even if you were having it before dinner, you would drink it straight out the fridge. You know, this isn't a wine you let warm up. You need to have it lovely and ice cold, lovely and zippy. And yeah, I can't believe it took me so long to think of it, but yeah, it's a beautiful wine. I would encourage you, if you haven't tried other Muscat de Bombe de Venise before, do explore them, but this is a particularly special one in my opinion. I think Marcel Arbaya says it's one of the sort of best vendu naturals in the whole of France, and you know, it really, they take it up a notch. They turn the volume up on Bombe de Venise. So yes. And Luke and Cam, what did you think of it? And then I'd love to hear what members think of it.
It's delicious. I love, as you say, the color. I know that, you know, it should be what it tastes like, but the color just is just so attractive and just makes you want to drink it. And then I do think in general, I think Bombe de Venise is a in this country underrated, underused wine. We don't go to it enough because it has that sweetness. And this, I was surprised how much the residual sugar you said was in the grapes, but because it's not as sweet or as rich as a Sauterne or a Tokay or, you know, a something else, a South African Chenin Blanc or something like that. So it's got a nice freshness, lightness, and the chilled, the coldness to it, as you say, works with the cheesecake. But I'm as guilty as anyone, but I kind of forget about Bombe de Venise. I don't know why. It probably needs a better marketing department to remind us about it. I don't know. But it's delicious. I love it. Yeah.
And the French drink the majority of it anyway, so it's hard. It's not the easiest wine to get hold of.
And they drink it at the beginning of the meal. Sometimes is it kind of with foie gras or?
Yeah, and with pate. And I don't know about this particular, and this is ignorance. I don't know if this would be as common to drink that way, but certainly those lower residual sugars that are more the sort of 150 grams, nobody drinks them with dessert. You know, that's not done. They are for the beginning of the meal. So maybe that's part of the problem. It's got a bit of an identity crisis. We want to drink it at the end. The French want to drink it at the beginning. Nobody knows what to do with it. So
but it's like a Pinot de Charente or that kind of stuff. Like, it's not massively drunk here, and then you're in France and someone gives you one of those at the beginning of the meal and you're like, why don't I drink this every day of my life? This is great, you know.
Absolutely. We've had a member, as well, Ken has asked, he's accidentally has a bottle of the 2011 tucked away. Any thoughts on how it will stand up? These wines do age. They age fine, and the sugar acts as a preservative more than anything. But I would say it's just dependent on what you want out of the wine. For me, I wouldn't personally age a Bombe de Venise too long, just purely because what I find so enchanting about these wines, and that is the word I would use to describe it, is that kind of floral perfume, that grapey aroma, all of those sorts of things. And I wouldn't want those to develop too much. Because that's personally what I find the most attractive. So for me, I would get it drunk, Ken, if I were you. You're welcome to hold on to it if you want to. I can't remember what, I think if Catherine pops the thing up again, we'll see what Marcel's put on the drink date of this. He'll have much more experience of this particular wine. aging. He'll have drunk lots and lots of older versions, but when you're going out to France, they are drinking the younger styles. But the French don't really believe in aging their wine too much anyway. Yeah, now to 2025. So I think that's the thing. It's not gonna get worse quickly, but I would drink it up for the pleasure of that lovely floral. I'll mention whilst this picture's up as well what part of the world it is. Obviously, it's part of the world close to my heart. But Baume de Venise, if anyone's been, this is a lovely shot of Ventoux in the background, Mont Ventoux, which I believe is Wednesday's stage of the Tour de France. So if you do log into the Tour de France on Wednesday, you might actually, I'm not sure of the exact route, but you may well see the vines around Baume de Venise. You certainly will see the vines of the Southern Rhone. But yes, it's basically tucked under a mountain range that would effectively be the other side of this photo, the Dentelle. And some lovely limestone soils. They supposedly reflect the sunshine, but I think, quite frankly, there's so much sunshine down there. I don't know how much they need to reflect it. But yeah, lovely limestone escarpment. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world, and very, very warm. But luckily, Baume de Venise is seasoned. I think the 1930s they got their sweet wine appellation ruling. They were one of the absolute earliest in the first tranche of French regions to get it. So yes, so they know what they're doing here. This is not a new pop-up wine region. This is a very old historic part, and to be honest, you can tell from the bottle itself, it is a very traditional bottle. I think sometimes that can put people off as well, Luke, if they don't understand what it is or what it's going to taste like. It'd be very hard to know that was a sweet wine unless it's in a burgundy shaped bottle, so it's not even in a Rhone shaped bottle really, and it's got nothing. It's 15%, so you've got no alcohol indicator it would be sweet really. You might just think it's a very, very strong dry muscat, but it's not. So
if you saw the color, you'd think it was an oxidized dry.
You think something was wrong with it. A faulty wine.
Yeah. But it's a bit like Riesling we were talking about at the beginning, that you look at the bottles, they're often very hard to decipher, and that can put people off, can't it? The word cabinet or trocken or any of that terminology, if you don't, it's very hard,
It really is. It really, really is. So hopefully evenings like this allow members to try things they might not have tried before. Sounds like some members have tried Muscat de Baume de Venise already, or bought some and accidentally hidden it away. But at least hopefully if you haven't tried it before, or you didn't try any of the wines this evening, then we've introduced you to something, and we've tried something new together. We have got a couple more questions now, members. I know, obviously, for those who want to watch the football, feel free, I guess is what I would say. You're very, very welcome to go and watch it. I'm going to hang around and I'm going to answer some questions, obviously the wine related ones as opposed to the food related ones. But if you are heading off now and going to watch the football, in the presence of all of you, I would like to say a huge, huge thank you to Luke and Cam for this evening. It's been
likewise, thank you. Yeah,
it's been a real pleasure. The food's been fantastic. I spotted a member right on the chat earlier that both food and wine arrived in mint conditions, so you can't ask for much more than that. It's been a really amazing opportunity, actually, to start what I hope will be an ongoing series with you guys. And yes, to any members leaving us now, we thank you as well for your support, for giving this a go. We'll really relish the feedback, of course. But then, yes, we hope to see you at another one soon.
Brilliant.
So cheers.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, yeah.
You're very welcome. But as I said, anyone wanting to stay, I have a plethora of questions and I'm going to work my way through them if I can, with some Muscat de Baume de Venise and a plate of delicious dessert. Ed Helps did say, I'm impressed that Luke and Cam can multitask. Watching the football and plating the dessert, nice one.
Ed, there's no football on here.
Yeah. Over in the corner of the room just to make sure that everything's fine outside.
We did have one question for you before you sneak off, which was just a fun question really from Pat, which is, who's looking after the restaurant this evening if you two are here?
Yeah, who knows?
We're just letting it roll.
Yeah.
No, we've got a really good team, to be honest. After 10 years, we'd be in trouble if we didn't have a a really strong team. So we're blessed. We've got some great people in there, and yeah, we can have a Saturday night off. Thank God.
And we've also, considering what's happened over the last 18 months, been really lucky to hold on to most of our team as well. They've been, very loyal, and we're kind of 3/4 open, half open, 3/4 open. Hopefully we'll be fully open soon. But yeah, as Cam says, we're very lucky. We've got a very good team that can run it much better than we can, to be honest. They normally tell us to just back off and go away.
How much use would you be with one arm, Luke? That's the other question.
Not a lot. I kind of cause more trouble than.
To be honest, I think he's better off with that arm.
Oh dear. Well, thank you both. I think, I mean, I'm happy for you guys. Most of the questions are wine questions, so I'm happy to answer those if you want. Feel free to go off and watch the football, on the one condition, if you don't mind, if anyone does have any questions, if any members want to know anything in particular pertinent to 10 Greek Street, would you mind if we emailed you?
Great. Oh, of course, yeah, by all means. We're very happy to hang around if you want us to. We can.
Completely up to you. Well, you're welcome to carry on multitasking if you like.
Exactly. Well.
Okay, let's do that. That's a good compliment.
We'll if you don't mind us occasionally flicking our eyes over to the corner of the room.
That's quite all right. You can give us all the updates.
Something happens.
So Robert Cookson has asked, well, I think it's me, why are you ignoring RHW, great wines of Bordeaux and Burgundy? A truly great wine can surely enhance any food. That is a very loaded question, Robert, I would say. I think that sometimes great wines, if paired badly, can do more damage to the wine than the food, unfortunately. That's probably a personal opinion. But you only have to try this is a very extreme example, but you only have to try a great old Burgundy, one of those earthy ones we were talking about earlier, with a strawberry to realise how quickly a bad pairing can ruin a wine. Whereas you could just about get away with a young fruity Pinot from somewhere like Los Carneros from the US that has a bit of residual sugar and probably some sweetness from oak, and that might be okay with the strawberry. And we're talking same grape variety, but wildly different, and you would probably argue that the Burgundy is the better quality wine. But you're right, I didn't ignore Bordeaux and Burgundy, but I think I wouldn't have paired Burgundy with the lamb. I probably would have paired a good Bordeaux. For me, you'd have had to have spent sort of 40 pounds plus to have got a really decent red Burgundy that would have held up to that lamb. That's just a price escalation thing. So for me, it wasn't the right thing to do to ask members to buy a wine of that price. On the flip side, we probably could have done a £12 really decent Bourgogne or right bank Bordeaux. To be honest, a cheaper end left bank Bordeaux as well would have done the job. Probably not a cru, but yeah, a Bordeaux would have been great. So next time, Robert, would you agree, Luke? Or
I think that the Bordeaux, although you were saying a younger Bordeaux, probably would have taken the place of the Rioja in this match, and the Rioja is amazing, and so I wouldn't want to have lost that. And then we've got a Pinot, so we're not a million miles from Burgundy, but as you say, and as you alluded to when we tasted the Pinot, that the value for money you're getting from Marlborough compared to Burgundy's, my favourite region, but you do have to go up in price and value, and that's what's so great about a lot of New World, but especially Marlborough Pinot, is that you get this amazing wine for really good value relatively compared to Burgundy. So I think that these two were good choices, but if money was no object, then we could have. I'm sure you could have found an amazing Burgundy that would have paired, or Bordeaux, or etc.
Absolutely, and that's the nice thing about food and wine matching as well, that you can have. I think part of Robert's question was about, like, if it's really good quality, surely it will be great with everything. Not necessarily true, but I do know, leaning towards the better quality wines tend to be more complex. They tend to have more going on, and that means you are able to pair them with more. I think what can be quite dull is if you have a wine that doesn't really have a lot going on and you pair it with a complex dish, then as I mentioned, the wine will fall down as well. So it is really good fun to pair with high-end wines, really good fun, but it's an expensive endeavor. And yeah, maybe something we'll do in the future, a sort of fine wine dinner, but it very much felt the bistro vibe of 10 Greek Street. We needed some nice kind of good quality small producer or interesting producer wines, rather than going in all guns blazing with the premiers and the Grand Crus of this world.
Yeah.
I've got a question for myself, which David Buchanan has asked, what happens to all the half-empty bottles of wine left over from my pairing experiments? Well, I have a thirsty husband, so that helps. But generally, I don't know about you guys if you do this, but we tend to give them out in the office. So we'll give them to other members of staff who perhaps have less access to wine tastings in the same sense that our team do. Friends and family get quite lucky if I have to do a big one. But yeah, mainly it's nice where we can, we taste in the tasting room, and we leave things out for the staff. So, and if my experiments are large, buyers, have an even bigger pool to dip from. And I have to also mention that my experiments, like the one I did for this evening, are few and far between. It's not every day I get to try sort of 7 or 8 wines for a course. And there was a lot of dipping into my own cellar after I thought, oh, that didn't work, I'll go and get something else. So, but yes, David, if I could send them out to members, I would. But sadly, they wouldn't keep. So when we do them in the office, they go to staff, and otherwise they tend to go to whoever will take them, actually. I'd be very unwell if I drank them all myself. We've had a question, Luke and Cam, about do you have any plans for another venue?
Wow.
We used to have, we had another restaurant in Hoxton Square for a while, and we had a place in the Whitechapel Gallery. And then we started a brewery about 3 or 4 years ago, which Wine Society, we work with you guys very closely, making your English lager. And so when we did that, we basically decided that we couldn't pay our full attentions to everything at once. And so we sold the restaurant in Hoxton, and the Whitechapel came to an end, and set up the brewery. I think considering the last 18 months, we're probably in a place where we're just going to see what goes on. But moving forward, who knows? But we'd probably focus it on the brewery side of things, whether we did a pub or a tap room or something like that.
Like a big pub with really good food offering.
Yeah. Food was always difficult and expensive thing to make money from, but since in the last 6 months, and since coming out of COVID and Brexit happened, the food prices have jumped so significantly. It's extremely hard business to be in at the minute. But we're carrying on with Greek Street, and can't wait to be reopened there. And that's our baby. That's the thing we've had for 10 years. So that's our focus for now. But you never know. If someone offered us an amazing opportunity, we wouldn't turn it down.
And you did just allude to it, but we're going a bit off piece, but in the absolute best possible way. Catherine has just popped into the chat for any members who weren't aware. But yes, our English lager is produced by Luke and Cam and their brewery. If you can, for a couple of minutes, would you mind telling us a little bit about it?
Yes, sure. So we have, as I said, we started a brewery about 3 or 4 years ago. It's based in just outside Market Harborough, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically just south of Leicester, north of Northampton, right in the heart of the British countryside. We're on a farm there in an old grain drying store that we've transformed into a brewery. And we make lager. That's our thing. We make fresh, unpasteurized, unfiltered lager, German style lagers. We've been brewing for about 3 years, and we have known Freddie Bulmer, who works for the Wine Society and is the beer buyer from there and from you guys. And we spoke to him, and they were looking to do a society own label lager, and so the conversations went from there, and we were really excited. It's a great project. We love doing it with Wine Society, and the lager is designed to be, as it says there, crisp, refreshing lager. As I said, unpasteurized, unfiltered, fresh, relatively low alcohol, 3.5. It's a mini pilsner, so it's got a bit of hops to it, and you'll read the blurb up there, but it is a real eclectic mix. We've got an Italian brewer, we've got a Hungarian kit, we've got English water from Market Harborough, we've got German hops, so it's a real blend of everything. But we try to make it in a really open, accessible, delicious lager style, but with depth of flavor, complexity to it, stands up to food. It's good when the sun shines and other times as well. So yeah, we've been doing that with the Wine Society for about 2 years or so. It's been fantastic. Works, I think, Touchwood seems to work very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly popular, and it's really popular with staff. And I don't know, a lot of members on the call might not even really know that the Wine Society does do lager, and might know we do spirits as well. But we decided not to put the lager on this evening because we didn't want it to look like some sort of odd cross-pollination. And I know nothing about lager, so I would have had to have done all sorts of different types of research. But as Catherine, or Gail, apologies, has put on the chat, it is a great session beer to stock up on to enjoy it if England make the final. So yeah, it would have been the perfect marriage to have the Society's English lager on the night that England were playing in the football. But there we go.
Next time.
No. Lovely stuff. Now, I've had one question that I can't answer. A member has asked me, can I translate the label of the Baume de Venise? I think it's in Latin.
Yeah.
So the answer is no, because I chose to do drama at school when the options were Latin or drama. So I wish I could, but unfortunately I can't. I don't know whether any other members speak Latin, or Luke or Cam, either of you have any Latin background?
Not this year.
I'm ashamed to say I did do Latin at school, and I've got no idea what it says.
I think it's Latin. I don't even know. It looks like
Although
it.
it doesn't. I don't remember Latin having the accents on it. So yeah, I'm a bit stumped.
It says, we can take a guess. Que ben buera du viera. I think that means what something, and then Dieu is God. So nobody really knows, but there we go. So apologies, I can't answer that question. I'll be doing my research.
I think it means this goes really well with cheesecake.
Yeah, that's what it means.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to see some other members failed.
Had you known that before, you wouldn't have to search. You could have just gone to the top of the
I could have just, if only my language skills were up to scratch, and I could have read that on the label. Oh, lovely stuff. Right, now, one thing I would like to do before people shoot off is I would love to have a poll to see what the favourite pairing of the evening was. And I believe that Catherine is ready behind the scenes. So we have the starter with the potted trout that was our first pairing. We have the main, so that's the lamb shank with the Zephyr Marlborough Pinot, the main, which is the lamb shank with the Society's Exhibition Rioja, and then this dessert that I'm savouring over now, the vanilla and creme de mer cheesecake with the Muscat de Baume de Venise. So we'll just give members a couple of seconds if they are hitting away. Oh, I get to vote as well on this one, and I'm not sure. Oh, right, it might not let me vote. Okay, I've gone for it. Hopefully members have managed to do that, and we should be able to show, I'm not going to know the results until they pop up on the screen, which will be quite fun. It's like being at the Oscars and doing my surprise face. So it's just about to show now. I hope everything got a vote. That's what you always wish for, but it is all personal preference in food and wine pairing. So the favourite pairing of the evening was the starter. So the potted trout with the Riesling Cabernet. I have to say, I'm really pleased, not only because von Kesselstadt is a great producer, but because that was the one that stumped me. That really, really stumped me. So I'm glad to see that over half. I'm glad to see that over half will have enjoyed that. Then we got some votes for the lamb, but the Rioja was preferred over the lamb. And then, so joint second was the Rioja and the Baume de Venise. Lovely. And Derek seems to have translated, or at least partly translated, that Ben Vieira, God will live. Okay. We're close enough. I'm glad I got God. And if that is Latin as well, Derek, will you let us know? Because like Luke said, it didn't really look like Latin, and I don't know the origins either. So next time French, apparently. Interesting. Next time I'm in Muscat de Baume de Venise or in Baume de Venise, I will find out where the origins of that came from. You've set me some homework. Right, lovely stuff. So I think we have answered all of the questions tonight. We certainly have. I hope that you've all had a lovely evening. I've certainly had an absolute ball. Not often I get to have a 3-course dinner that's been prepared for a restaurant served up to me like this. Catherine and Gil behind the scenes, you have been fantastic as always. Lovely pictures and great. Well done for making sure that I kept time. As members know, I can ramble a little bit. But a main thanks to Luke and Cam for giving up their Saturday, for allowing us an insight into the restaurant, for letting us explore and also sort of dictate a bit of menu. You've been an absolute pleasure to work with, and it's been lovely hearing from you. So we hope we can do it again one day. And members, thank you so much for joining. We'll see you soon.
Ciao.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.
Cheers.